So there I was, sitting in my chair, pondering my orb, milking the last bit of this meme, as my mind began to wander off into the infinite astral plane, when a thought occurs to me. Yo, there's no way this skunk with massive tits can be an elite rank character, she fucking blows. And on top of that, you can only get her during a specific event, are you kidding me? But as soon as the thought was over, a more interesting one manifested. Huh, I wonder how Gacha began. Alright, okay, fine. Maybe I could have introduced the topic of the history of Gacha better. But let me elaborate for a second here and ask you. Have you ever wondered what the first Gacha was like? And how do we start here? At a simple machine that dispensed capsule toys for children, to anime waifus, in which you have no problem dropping your whole paycheck on because she's wearing a different outfit. Well, these are questions I've had for a while, and you probably never wondered these two things. But I already put the time and effort into making this video because I wanted to. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the history of Gacha. So if you don't know what Gacha is, well, for one, I'm jealous of you, and two, you probably shouldn't watch this video. As someone who's been sober from their Gacha addiction, and as a random person in the internet, I'm trying to save your life here, man, and you're just going to have to trust me. And lastly, Gacha originally began as a series of vending machines created by Ryusu Shigeta back in the 1960s, when he received a vending machine from the US and thought to himself, I can make this better. And so, his revolutionary idea was to put toys inside of capsules, shove them back in the vending machine, and place them around his shop. Which, holy shit, thinking about it now, it's such a simple yet amazing idea, which is why Bandai jumped in at the opportunity sometime later in 1977 to try their hand at this. And well, they succeeded. Maybe a little too well, since the word Gachapon is a registered trademark in the US. And over the following decades, the gacha market will continue to grow and adapt to the modern era. This shift would begin to include new items, some that heavily appeal to the otaku community and include rare, or sometimes limited edition items, from anime and games. By 2010, the rise of all these gacha machines and the money they were making would eventually catch the attention of Konami, and they in turn began creating a game that would spark the joy of collecting monsters. Much like another franchise I know, along with you and myself and my wallet crippling depression for not getting what I want. Again, much like another franchise I know. Now, there is more to the history of Gachapons, and I do recommend people doing their own research on the topic, as my video focuses more on the video game side of things. Therefore, Dragon Collection is considered by many to be the first gacha game, created by Konami for the Japanese social network RE back in 2010. It was essentially what Farmville, Dragon City, and Candy Crush were to Facebook, games meant to be played alongside other people in your social media group. And there isn't much to it besides being a standard gacha. But cut it some slack, this bad boy was the first of its kind. However, it did introduce many of the same mechanics that we're used to seeing today, such as rolling for characters, collecting items, combining characters into more powerful ones, and the most impactful of all, you should spend money on our game to do a 10 pull for a chance of getting something you want. Oh, you don't want to spend money on our game and want to grind instead? Yikes. Sorry to hear that, buddy, but we have a stamina system. Oh, you can wait. Well, we also implemented all these other systems that hold your progress up to a certain point, so you must constantly keep grinding, but don't worry, with a small investment of, oh, I don't know, the money you've been saving up for your college tuition, you can continue playing our game for many years to come. The sad irony is that there is probably somebody out there that did spend their college tuition on some 10 pulls, but anyways, this mechanic proved to be useful, and Dragon Collection became Konami's biggest moneymaker, causing everyone that was into gacha to play this game. Even the media got into this phenomenon, calling it gacha, or gacha games. This phenomenon caused other game developers to want to get into the action, and much like the Battle Royale craze, many developers began creating clones of Dragon Collection, but with their own twist to the genre. You see, as developers saw how much money Dragon Collection was making for Konami, they thought about new types of gacha mechanics to implement into their games, and one of the first and more infamous mechanics came in the form of Complete Gacha. Now, you may be wondering, what makes Complete Gacha so infamous? And to answer that, let me paint you a picture. Imagine for a minute that you're putting a puzzle together. So far, most of it is complete, but you're missing one piece and you can't find it. So you call the manufacturer of said puzzle and tell them you're missing a piece. And they send you a replacement. However, they don't send you the right one. So you try again. And again, they don't send you the right one. And you keep doing this until eventually you have another set of the same puzzle, but without the one specific piece you still need. So essentially, you're giving yourself blue balls, and nobody likes that. Unless you do. Then I guess you do you, buddy, I won't judge. But the Japanese government doesn't like being blue balled, and notice how this mechanic was predatory towards young kids and people with a gambling addiction, and acted rather quickly to resolve the issue compared to us in the West. However, complete gachas were never officially made illegal. Instead, mobile developers attempted to self-regulate, and even went as far as to create a committee called the Japan Social Games Association, which didn't last long. But even though the committee didn't work, developers did manage to successfully self-regulate, and their new game ditched the complete gacha mechanic for new ones, such as Bots Gacha, which allows you to draw prizes from a set pool of items. And it's pretty much the same thing as a complete gacha, and got famous around the same time, so we're done talking about it. Redraw Gacha, which does what the name implies and allows you to re-roll. Trade Gacha, which allows you to trade specific items for others you might need. Consecutive and Step Up Gacha, which both increases the chance of you getting items. The difference is that, for one you have to get items in bulk in order to increase your chances, and the other you need to keep rolling for a higher drop rate. Open versus Close Gacha, which one shows the exact probabilities of pulling a rare item, and the other one doesn't. And lastly, Discounted Gacha, which is rolls for lower prices, or as I like to call it, they trick you into spending more money because there's an event going on, and some of the characters got new outfits. Now, to be completely honest, when I began making this video, I thought it wasn't going to be so difficult to talk about gacha. I thought there would be more to the history about the genre, and don't get me wrong, there is. But most of it is controversy. From its humble beginnings, if you can call it that, to today, there has been a great deal of controversy surrounding the genre, especially ever since the rise in popularity of it over in the West, and developers adopting gacha-like, or, to be fair, surprise mechanics. But I really wanted to highlight some of the positives of gacha, such as the obvious, it's free to play, and while this is on purpose to get people to try out the game and later spend money, I think it's not that bad. You can have your own opinion about it. The second thing about gacha that is a positive to me at least, is that anybody can get into it, because it is not a difficult genre to understand. Now, there is obviously a great downside to both these points, I won't deny that, but you have to understand that there are people like myself that genuinely enjoy it, even for its flaws, which is being games targeted towards people that are more prone to accepting their metamorphosis into a whale, or little kids that don't know any better. Look, I believe the genre has a spot for every otaku out there, and it's not like gacha being predatory is a secret. If you're part of the community that plays gacha, you already know that. And yet, we still enjoy the games, and make fun of others within the community for dropping their child's college tuition on some pools to get a cute anime waifu. But the genre is still growing with popular games out there like Genshin Impact, Arknights, and FGO. Oh, I almost forgot. And of course, the critically acclaimed mobile game, Xiao. As I was saying, many people within the community know the issue with gacha and still want more gacha games to come out. Some hopefully in the same field as Genshin Impact, which has in my opinion put gacha into the spotlight. but in a good way. As many players enjoy the open world gameplay, with its simplistic system of switching characters out based on their element, and I think many developers will start looking at Genshin as a standard now. Unless this infamous trend keeps living. So currently, I can say that Gacha is popular, as we can all see that if you're part of the internet, as we have seen many collaborations some Gacha games have done with popular anime, or how some Gacha have been getting anime adaptations. So obviously, this type of games are keeping up with current trends, as anime in the past few years have gotten this massive rise in popularity. However, there is this looming sense of uncertainty for the future of Gacha, at least for some of us out there. And that has to do with the unfortunate trend of NFTs. Which, if you don't know what it is, I do suggest doing your own research, because as much as I dislike it, it is interesting to know more about how we're destroying ourselves. And although I had hopes that the Japanese business market will avoid this, my hope was quickly put to rest, as in early January, the Square Enix CEO showed interest in NFTs, and Konami sold JPEGs of Castlevania to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the games. And I believe it's just a matter of time for mobile companies to begin accepting NFTs into their games. Hell, I have already seen commercials of some gacha-like games with that system. So, my final words for the future of gacha are: please don't include NFTs into your games, otherwise you're destroying the Wells ecosystem. Thank you. If you somehow came across this video and watched it from beginning to end, thank you. I don't know what to say, I'm obviously new to this, but a like and a share would be appreciated, as well as if you could subscribe. I'll be putting out more content kind of like this that revolves around certain things within the otaku culture and the internet. But anyways, thank you for watching, and have a great day.